We give ourselves to God's revelation of Himself in Scripture because He uses it as a means of grace to rescue us. He uses it to draw us to Himself. Like before we meet Jesus for the first time, and maybe you can go back and look at your life and you can say, you know, I remember when I really met Jesus and things really came to life, but there was a period of time before that. Hindsight is 20/20, and I remember how, there was, maybe it was my mother, or maybe it was my Sunday school teacher, or maybe it was somebody at school, or maybe it was somebody at work, or maybe it was somebody who was there for me when my life was coming apart, and they spoke life into my life, and they reminded me of the Lord's love, and and they shared Scripture with me, and that brought me deeper. Like I didn't know Jesus yet, but I could feel Him drawing me to Himself and pulling me into His life, into this place of knowing Him and knowing His perfect love. Right? The Scriptures are an instrument of God's grace to bring us into His life. Like we cannot walk away from the means of grace that God has given us in His love and in His grace to reproduce His life in us. This is why, friends, that every sermon you will ever hear in this building, as long as I'm the pastor, is going to be an exposition of a biblical text. We may talk about the news sometimes, but the news doesn't drive the preaching. We read a lot of books, but the books don't drive the preaching. One book drives the preaching. The book that is able to instruct you for salvation through faith in Jesus Christ. The one who gave Himself, the one whose hands were pierced, whose face was scarred, whose back was beaten, who gave His life in love for us. Trust Him and attend to His word. If you want to know what His character is like, if you want to know what His will is, there is one place to get it. And we will put that at the center of our fellowship as long as I have anything to say about it. If you want a healthy church, that has to be the priority. So we gather, counterintuitively for some, to read an old book written in a different language. Because for some reason, God in His wisdom decided to use it to give us life. And let me say this, friends. If I didn't believe that with all my heart, I would get a different job and sleep in on Sundays. I don't get up at 5 o'clock on Sunday mornings because I don't believe that what we have here is the gift of God for life. I don't stay up on Saturday night going over the outline. Is that clear? Is the transition work? Is the bottom line as best as it can be? Is there anything keeping us from understanding what God has for? I don't do that because I think it's unimportant. If I didn't believe the words that I'm speaking to you today, I would get a different job.